All right. Let's move on to some climate change news. Hopefully, you all can see this. I don't know. I'm waiting for my delay. All right, cool. This is from Steve Bowen. Torrential rain since October 6th, mainly from Tropical Storm Linfa, has caused extensive damage. Impacts Vietnam and Cambodia. Vietnam, 90 dead, 34 missing, 160,000 structures inundated, $518 million economic loss. Cambodia, 25 dead, 73,720 homes damaged, 724 plus thousand crop acres inundated. And yeah, getting massive amounts of rainfall, and this is causing a lot of damage. We have been kind of covering this or trying to cover this. There's not a lot of news around, not a lot of news around this, and I haven't seen a lot of this news in other outlets. Just more extreme weather news, which is getting oh so ho hum and old hat, and not something that, especially in the U.S. with the news just constantly covering the drama, the ongoing television series of Biden, Trump, and Antifa, fascist militia, Proud Boys, whatever, and Amy Coney Barrett and all this stuff. Socialism versus fascism, and nobody really knowing what the hell is going on. Here's a tweet from Zach Labe. This is current Laptev sea ice conditions. Which, man, that is almost a flat line. Very close to a flat line. And where is the rebound of ice? Here's the 2018. All the previous rebounds of ice were already fairly underway, or definitely underway. 2018 being the last, or being the outlier in the previous years, but now 2020 just trying to set records is what we're trying to do in 2020. And by gum, we're going to do it. We're going to set all the records in 2020. I don't know if you guys are hearing a lot of dog breathing. There's a lot of dog breathing over here. On the fence with Muzza, what's going on? Good to see you. By the way, I don't know who's going to hear this, but I had a couple of t-shirt orders in the last week, and I've sent some people some emails, and I need information. Could you all answer your emails, please? I'll probably send some more emails, but I can't send any shirts out unless you all answer my questions. So please do so. Donald McCarthy, big waves in the Arctic. Big waves. Oh, speaking of the Arctic, more speaking of Arctic. Look at this. This is from 2 days ago. Temperature anomaly. Look at Greenland. Looking like 10 or 20 degrees Celsius above. I mean, that is just red hot. Look at that. And literally red hot. Also other areas of the Arctic. Not good, not a good look. And that's probably why the Laptev sea ice looks like that. Also Donald McCarthy, big waves. Bullet rope lamppost, Atlantification. Kevin Shanholzer, what's my email? There's an email address always in the description box, or blackbearnews@gmail. Donald McCarthy, 4,000-foot wave out of Alaska soon. Surfing good. Okay. Geez, a boy in a shopping cart. Way to go. All right. Very nice. Let's move on to this tweet from Go Green at Eco Warriors. So Go Green says Earth barreling towards hothouse state not seen in 50 million years. Epic new climate record shows we are likely to see a 2C world by 2035. What do y'all think? You got earlier than 2035 or later, and this will trigger natural feedback systems that currently keep the Earth cool to unravel. I believe that is already in the works, guys. I think that's already happening there. 2C is not going to cause, let's go back to this tweet, cause natural feedback systems. It will accentuate those. But cause, no. That's already been done. That's already happening. So let's look into this. This from Live Science. From September 10th, 2020. I don't know how I missed this. How did I miss this? This was over a month ago. Earth barreling towards hothouse state not seen in 50 million years. Epic new climate record show. Record goes back to the dinosaur extinction. So this is 66 million years of Earth's history, temperature history, right? And here was a hothouse Earth way back when, in those in the yesteryears, 55 million years ago. Right around here, 50 million years ago. You remember that. And then I can't for whatever reason, I can't get this graph to pop out. I wish it would. Hold on. Let's view this image in another location. Here we go. So here we go. And then then time starts speeding up here. Here's where we are, 1850. We are here. Here we are, 2020. We are here. But look at the projections of where we're going to go. And the problem with this is not the overall temperature. The problem is with how quickly this is going to happen, right? These lines were kind of happened over millions of years or even tens of thousands of years, all these fluctuations. And this fluctuation is just a dead-on spike up. And that's not good. Anyways, let's read this a little bit. 66 million years ago, after a massive asteroid hit Earth, with the explosive energy of roughly 1 billion nuclear bombs, a shroud of ash, dust, and vaporized rock covered the sky and slowly rained down on the planet. Those are good times. Remember that? As plant and animal species died en masse, tiny undersea amoebas called forems continued to reproduce, building sturdy shells out of calcium and other deep-sea minerals. Just as they had for hundreds of millions of years, when each forem inevitably died, pulverized into seabed sediment, They kept a little piece of Earth's ancient history alive in their fossilized shells. For decades, scientists have studied those shells, finding clues about the ancient Earth's ocean temperatures, its carbon budget, and the composition of minerals spilling through the air and seas. Now, in a new study published today in the journal Science, researchers have analyzed the chemical elements in thousands of forum samples to build the most detailed climate record of Earth ever, and it reveals just how dire our current climate situation is. The new paper, which comprises decades of deep ocean drilling missions into a single record, details Earth's climate swings across the entire Cenozoic era, the 66 million year period that began with the death of the dinosaurs and extends to the present epoch of human-induced climate change. The results show how Earth transitioned through 4 distinct climate states dubbed the warm house, hot house, cool house, and ice house states in response to changes in the planet's orbit, greenhouse gas levels, and the extent of polar ice sheets. The zigzagging chart shown above ends with a sobering peak. According to the researchers, the current pace of anthropogenic global warming far exceeds the natural climate fluctuation seen at any other point in the Cenozoic era, and it has the potential to hyperdrive our planet out of a long ice house phase into a searing hot house state. Now that we have succeeded in capturing the natural climate variability, we can see that the projected anthropogenic warming will be much greater than that. Study co-author James Zakos, professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences at the University of California, Santa Cruz, said in a statement, "The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projections for 2300 okie dokie in the business as usual scenario will potentially bring global temperature to a level the planet has not seen in 50 million years. However, we will not be here to see it if something drastic doesn't happen. And something drastic is happening anyways, whether we like it or not, whether we do anything or not." This is like a really cool picture. This is the Resolution drill ship. Into the hothouse, to compile their new era-long climate map, the study authors examined fossil forum shells in deep sea sediment cores, long tubes of rock, sediment, and microbes drilled from the world's oceans over the past several decades. Forums, short for foraminifera, are microscopic plankton whose oldest relatives appeared in the ocean close to 1 billion years ago. The deeper scientists dig into the seabed, the older the forum specimens they uncover. The ratios of carbon and oxygen isotopes, versions of elements in forum shells, hold critical climate information. The ratio between the oxygen isotopes, oxygen 18 and oxygen 16, for example, can reveal how warm the surrounding water was when a forum constructed its shell. The higher the ratio, the colder the water. Anyways, because the team's climate record covers such an incredibly long time period, the researchers also had to consider astronomic impacts, I don't know why I can't read today, on the planet's climate. That is how Earth's slowly changing orbit and tilt towards the sun impact the amount of sunlight reaching different parts of the planet at different times, also known as the Milankovitch cycles. When the team overlaid orbital data with their isotopic climate data, they saw that the orbital variations created distinct but relatively small-scale changes to the global climate. Crucially, each big jump between climate states was tied to a massive shift in greenhouse gas levels, the researchers said. For example, about 10 million years ago after the dinosaur extinction, Earth jumped from a warm house state to a hot house state. This event, known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, saw temperatures up to 29 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 degrees Celsius above modern levels, Zakos said, and was driven by a massive release of carbon into the atmosphere, thought to be the result of huge volcanic eruptions in the North Atlantic. Similarly, as carbon dioxide disappeared from the atmosphere over the next 20 million years, ice sheets started to form in Antarctica and the planet entered a cool house phase with surface temperatures averaging around 7 Fahrenheit or 4°C above modern levels. About 3 million years ago, Earth entered an icehouse phase driven by waxing and waning ice sheets in the northern hemisphere. Now, human greenhouse gas emissions are causing temperatures to rise to an extent not seen in tens of millions of years, and we are just at the beginning. We are at the very, very beginning of this rapid warming. This rise is well beyond the natural variations triggered by Earth's changing orbit. The researchers concluded, and if current greenhouse emissions hold steady, the climate could skyrocket back to levels not seen since the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. The transition from icehouse to hothouse won't take millions of years, Zacho said. It will take hundreds. Some people think decades or even less. Just speed it all way up. Way up. I can tell you right now, we don't have, it'll definitely, we'll warm over hundreds of years, but we don't have hundreds of years. So you can get that out of your silly little mind right now. Right now. Let's see. Guys, we have 130 watching, 48 likes. Please like up the video. And if you are new, please subscribe. Lightning Rod says, I'm in the decades line. Yeah, I think most of us are. Pedigree Monkey says only class war can stop climate change. I'd like to agree with you on that. Right now, I was thinking as I was reading that article that this is all very interesting, but it doesn't really matter because humans can't figure out how to actually see what's going on or admit to what's going on or to take responsibility for the things that they do. Humans have a huge blind spot in perception to action ratio. And so the only thing that matters right now is the study in that area. And I was just thinking this morning that, there are a lot of, people out there that would consider themselves, we see them as political activists who are also heavily involved in the spiritual world or the discovery of self, right? People who, I don't know if you want to call them spiritualists or spiritual healers or, there's just people out there that are, it's an interesting phenomenon when one of the Democratic presidential nominees or, people in the race is Marianne Williamson, who's like a spiritual guide. Her forte, her specialty, her area of expertise is in, spirituality or the study or the deep look at, what it is to be human and to be a better human, right? And she was one of the most loved candidates out there. I mean, I think people really, really enjoyed seeing her be a part of the political process, even though, most people also thought she was a nut, a quack, a weirdo. What the hell is she doing here? She's not a politician. What's the point? But I mean, I think a lot of people saw the value in what she was bringing to the table, which is that, look, we have these political things that are affecting humans, but we also have this spiritual malady, and we have these huge shortcomings as a species. We have a huge shortcoming as the human race, as belonging to the human race. And really, we're going to have to address those things if we're really going to make some changes. However, the people in control, the political class, the oligarchs, the capitalists, the corporatists, the Elon Musks of the world, are really all about power, wielding power, and wielding the propaganda that props up their power. And we're never really going to get around that. And I don't even think that spiritual awakening is going to help us get around that. Again, going back to what Pedigree Monkey said, class war, there's going to have to be some kind of conflict, some kind of pushback. And it's not going to be, it's not going to happen from the inside. We're not going to suddenly get somebody really, lovely and smart and spiritual in office that's going to, change the whole course of history, because that person is going to be smeared and driven out of the process every single time, especially in the U.S. Maybe not in other countries, right? Maybe not in New Zealand, maybe not in Bolivia, maybe not in, countries that are smaller and differently aligned or differently organized. It's not going to happen in those countries. Stuff like that can happen, but it can't happen in the U.S. because we are way too deep in the octopus tentacles. Where there's no way out. We're going to have to chop those tentacles to bits before we get to a place where we can even operate on a higher consciousness, right? So there you go. But yes. Tor Woodendahl says we're not going to change even if we do. We got the next 30 years baked in already. Yeah. And I also to allude to something else that I saw today on Facebook, somebody posted something about, the two-party system and we need a third choice and a fourth choice and a fifth choice, obviously alluding to ranked choice voting. But I mean, yeah, it's a great idea. And we have ranked choice voting in like Maine or some state. I don't know. The problem is that the general population is just way too propagandized and way too brainwashed. And it's going to take 10 years to even wake people up to that idea, let alone, we're not going to get ranked choice voting on a federal level or at a level where it's going to make a difference because there's just too much money and too much power and there's too many players that are intent on mucking up any kind of progress, thwarting any kind of progress or any kind of, road path to some kind of logical way to organize our society. Yeah, it's going to, ranked choice voting is not going to happen in the U.S., at least not for 20 or 30 years. And by then, it's way too late for anything consequential to happen. So, yeah. J. Thadcast, why is the octopus always the bad guy? I don't know. It's just you know what I'm saying. He's just a symbol, just an icon. Salt Lakers, we have skank choice voting. Sounds close enough. I like it. Anyways, realize. Complexity does have us locked in along with indoctrination, ignorance, and apathy. Right. Yeah, I mean, like, the point of everything that I'm trying to do, and I think other people are trying to do, is to like educate and wake people up and get people to, transcend, go beyond, get past this current time paradigm. But it's really hard to get past the media and the octopus, the squid, the vampire squid, whatever you want to call it. Because they run the media, they own the media, and now they're trying to sink it's already happening. They're sinking their tentacles into alternative media, YouTube, alternative spaces, shutting down voices on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, right? They're really trying to, take that influence and that suppression and move it into every space where people can communicate. And that is going to, further hamper the possibility of waking people up. Had Vollmer says, I'm teaching, learning Dharma. Yeah. Judy Truitt says, we are at the fourth turning. Drastic change will follow. Well, and so there may be just a combination of all those things, right? Where people start waking up. But there's also people are going to start fighting back, and maybe there'll be some kind of slow walked collapse, right? Economic collapse. Things are going to start to fall apart. The climate is falling apart already. But it's not going to be, it's not going to be quick enough or organized enough to really like make a difference. And I'm being really pessimistic right now because honestly and truthfully and, you know, somewhere in my soul, I'm holding out hope that it becomes quick and organized and somehow consequential, but I don't know that that will happen. Anyways, on the fence with Muzza says, fun fact, apparently New Zealand voted main party can pick Green Party if they want to or not. Well, sure. So you have ranked choice voting in New Zealand on the fence? Yeah, right? You guys have that. Or you have a multi-party system, right? Like they do in Britain and in Europe and other places, right? Going South says 2035 is the new 2100. Indeed. Okay, let's move on to the last thing that I wanted to, well, a few more things. I forgot where I got this. Anyways, in the European Union, where supposedly they're way more enlightened about climate change. Oh, on the fence, you do have ranked choice voting. Yeah, okay. Or a multi-party system. EU strategy is failing to tackle the biggest methane emitter, agriculture. So, supposedly, the EU is way ahead or something. But anyways, no reduction targets, no mandatory actions to cut methane emissions at farm level, no coherence with existing climate and air quality objectives. These are some reasons why the European Commission's methane strategy will fall short, argues Margarita Toloto. Why is it important to focus on methane? Methane is both accelerating climate breakdown and contaminating the air we breathe, generating ground-level ozone that harms people's health, crops, and ecosystems. Yet up until now, no serious action has been taken to limit methane emissions, and a leaked document shows that the European Commission strategy, expected for October 14th, is not up to the challenge. Methane comes from a range of sources. In the EU in 2017, the energy sector accounted for 16% of the total methane emissions. 28% came from waste, and the remaining 54% from agriculture. Of the share, enteric fermentation of ruminants, belching, and flatulence accounts for 81% of manure management, and use for 17%, rice cultivation for 1%. In 2020, the Commission announced that the methane strategy covering all sectors, energy, waste, and agriculture was going to be adopted soon. Good news, or so we thought. The leaked version of the Commission strategy, however, leaves a bitter taste in our mouths, as the only sector touched by real action is energy. Why? Because it is easy. To be clear, it is good news that the European Commission aims to reduce methane emissions from the energy sector. The biggest oil and gas companies have already autonomously set their own methane reduction target in their latest attempt to prove that there could still be a future for fossil fuel. Therefore, tackling emissions from the energy sector is important, but in itself not enough, as it leaves over 80% of methane emissions unaddressed. Why then is the Commission deliberately ignoring agricultural methane, though this accounts for over half of all methane emissions? Because it is a difficult job with strong opposition from the big industrial farming lobby. Yet cutting methane emissions coming from the fields is absolutely essential. All right. So they're, again, falling very short from even taking account of what must be done to control methane emissions. Lastly, guys, I want to read this article from CBS News Sunday morning. This is from yesterday. And who's the author of this? I can't really see. Anyway, so this says, for many, climate change finally hits home. Let's hope so. 2020 has been a year of nonstop crises. For a while there, it was almost possible to forget an ongoing crisis that used to have our attention, climate change, but nature found a way to remind us. In the Midwest, punishing 100-mile-per-hour winds. In the Southwest, a brutal succession of floods and droughts. On the coast, a freakish number of devastating hurricanes. And in our western states, historic megafires that sent a plume of ash and smoke all the way to the East Coast. More than 4 million acres have burned in California alone. To put that into perspective, that is larger than the state of Connecticut. And these fires are still burning, said Chief Daniel Berlant, Assistant Deputy Director for CAL FIRE, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Our climate here in California has been changing now for decades. In fact, this year's fire seasons are on average 75 days longer than they were in the 70s. This year's fire season will likely just roll right into 2021. There is no end in sight, he said. In the last 20 years, we've experienced twice the number of weather disasters as we did in the previous 20 years, cost so far about $3 trillion. Yes, climate change is back in the headlines. We always put climate change on the back burner as something we can deal with later, but we're out of time for that. There is no later. We need to deal with it now, said Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, a marine biologist, policy expert, and co-editor of All We Can Save, a book of essays by women climate leaders. Johnson offered a climate change refresher for correspondent David Pogue. We burn all these fossil fuels, all these greenhouse gases go up in the air. It's carbon dioxide, it's methane, and they create this layer of gas that is basically like a blanket on top of the planet. That blanket traps heat from the sun that would have bounced back out into space. It's funny that we call it the greenhouse effect, said Johnson, because most people don't spend a lot of time hanging out in greenhouses. Pogue said, I think it should be called the dog in the car in summer effect. Yes, indeed. Exactly. Leaving the car and the dog in the car with the windows rolled up in the summer effect. Yes. Or more frighteningly, your child. Leaving a child strapped in your car with the windows up and it's 90 degrees outside. That's the effect. Because it isn't the same thing. Isn't it the same thing? The sun goes into the car, it doesn't fully bounce out, so the car gets really hot inside, and then what happens? You might come out to find a dead dog or a dead child even. That's a much better analogy, Johnson said. David Wallace Wells, the deputy editor of New York Magazine, is the author of The Uninhabitable Earth, a book that explores what will happen if we don't cut out carbon emissions soon. You better cut it out. The planet is now warmer than in the entire history of human civilization. He said, it's like we've landed on a new planet with a new set of climate conditions, and we have to figure out what of the civilization that we brought with us to this point can survive these conditions. Wallace Wells said climate change is not just about warmer weather. It changes the whole system. Rainstorms are going to be more intense. The oceans are heating up, which means that hurricanes are going to be more intense, more frequent, as they already are. There are going to be extreme droughts as well as extreme rainfalls. It's just a kind of scrambling of what has been. And then there's the fact that because the climate is so out of whack, food, plants don't know when to bloom, when to go dormant. They get confused and then they end up dying. And some of those plants provide us with food. And if those plants can't grow that provide us with food, that's a big problem. It's just kind of a scrambling of what has been a very stable system on which we've erected all of human civilization. It's not just unstable weather, it's unstable us. Agricultural yields could fall by half or more over the course of the century if we don't change course. Again, he's putting it way out there at the end of the century. He's not saying it like this could happen in the next 5 or 10 years, which is actually slightly, it's a disservice to people to not let them know this is going to be happening very, very soon. Is already happening. Is already happening. I just read an article the other day. The loss of honeybees is affecting crops right now. Floods are affecting crops right now. The availability of some food is being affected by climate change right now. And it's going to get worse. It affects respiratory illnesses, cancer. It affects cognitive performance, development of children. If you've been paying attention, none of this is news. What is new is that public opinion about climate crisis is finally changing. Pogue said, when you see these headlines like 70% of Americans are now at least mildly curious, it's not something to brag about. It still seems really low to me. Yeah, mild curiosity is not something that's really going to be effective in anything. Oh, really? No, geez. Well, that sounds really bad. To me, something like 70 or 75% of the country expressing concern about an issue seems really high. Wallace Wells says, we live in an incredibly polarized world where most of these issues, if you can nudge it past 50%, you're doing incredibly well. Well, that's true. So what took us so long to become alarmed? Wallace Wells says, until quite recently, people didn't see the effects in their lives. I think almost no one now can look at their TV screens and think to themselves, climate change isn't real. Well, some people really do try. And they still think that stupid shit. The federal government has done virtually nothing about climate change in the last few years, but in many ways, the country has marched right ahead anyway. The mayors of 438 cities, the governors of 25 states, and the 700 universities have committed to cutting their emissions, mostly in line with the Paris Agreement. The 2016 international commitment to limit the Earth's heating up to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or less in the next 80 years. About 1,000 major corporations have pledged to cut their emissions to Paris Agreement levels too. Oh, isn't that nice? They've pledged. That's great. A lot of them actually can't do it because their emissions are tied to their profits. And if they cut their emissions, they're going to cut their profits, and they're not going to do that. So pledging is the best they can do. And why would corporations go green? Well, right now it's to make people feel like they're doing the right thing, even if they're not. Because of public pressure, investor pressure, and employee pressure. Technology has been marching on too. For example, carbon capture farms featuring direct air capture machines, huge fans that extract carbon dioxide back out of the air. From there, the plan is to store it underground, turn it into fuel or building materials, or even sell it to carbonated drink companies. Okay. Okay. That's funny. Wallace Wells, I don't know why that's funny, but it's funny. Wallace Wells said they can take carbon out of the atmosphere. I'm drinking climate change. They take carbon out of the atmosphere at the cost of about $100 a ton. That's much more expensive than it would cost to not put carbon up there in the first place. Right. Those prices will probably fall further. 11 of those plants are already operating as pilot projects. That's good. That's gonna have to actually happen somehow. Again, the idea is to create emissions, taking carbon out of the air from emissions we've already created. Right? You see the problem with that. How it actually operates is a little bit ridiculous on many levels. You don't want to use these to solve the whole problem because among other things, it would mean essentially barnacling the whole planet with plantations of carbon capture machines, Wallace Wells said. But I do think there is a role for carbon capture. Whatever steps we take, we'll have to take them fairly. Research shows that extreme weather hits hardest in low-income areas and communities of color. Johnson said it's people in low-lying areas, people near waterfronts that aren't protected, but also people who don't have the resources to leave. Everyone in Hurricane Katrina who was trying to get out of New Orleans couldn't. That's really, if you're stuck there, you're stuck there. If you don't have money to leave, you got nowhere to go. A lot of people didn't have cars. It's often a privilege to get to leave before a storm. That's why also it's, on some level, a crime against humanity for media companies not to tell people the truth about climate change. I think it should be a punishable crime. Because if you're not telling people, just regular folk, right? Like, hey, climate change is getting worse. You might want to leave where you live because, you could die and you won't be able to leave on short notice. So maybe make those plans, over time. All over the world, we're building some of the most expensive public works projects in human history. Defenses against rising sea levels and flooding from intense rains. This is a picture of a storm surge barrier to protect. It was built in 1997 to protect Rotterdam, Europe's largest port. And in New York is so valuable that we're going to have to protect it. Said Wallace Wells, we have to? We must. We're going to build big old $1 billion sea walls. Ha ha ha. That's going to be just a joke. And so there are a variety of plans that are already in place, but there are also much more ambitious plans that haven't yet got greenlit to enclose the entire harbor in a seawall, right? They're going to do that. Or they're going to try. They're going to start anyways. I don't know how far they're going to get. That would cost hundreds of billions of dollars. So there is some good news, if you want to call it that. More people are talking about climate change. More countries are doing something about it, even China. And last year, for the first time, the price of clean, renewable energy actually fell below the price of burning coal. This is all. Look, I'm being cynical about this, but these are all, some glimmers, however small, of hope. On the other hand, we're getting started far too late, and that's real. Pogue asked David Wallace Wells if the latest developments give him any hope. If you're hoping to preserve the planet of our grandparents, there's no reason for hope, he replied. Wow. Pretty straightforward. If you're hoping to preserve the climate as we know it today, there's really no reason for hope there either. Whoa. Good on you, David Wallace Wells, for telling the truth about that. But I think that the worst case scenarios are getting considerably less likely because a lot of this action has taken place. A lot of the political momentum that we're seeing. Well, there's a little bit of hopium for you. But, he's holding out some hope. I think a lot of people are. Scientists like Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson are more skeptical. I don't really think myself as an optimist, but as a realist, she said. So much of this change is already baked in. Good on you, Ayanna, for admitting that. Thank you. Things are really dire, but I'm also not giving up. And honestly, who are we to give up? We have to try. And so there you have that. Some truth telling in that article, and I appreciate that. A little bit of hopium in that article, of course, which is expected. Hey guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel at the links below, PayPal, Patreon, Square. Also, if you'd like to watch the live streams, you can watch the live streams on my Patreon channel. You can subscribe for as little as $1. So hopefully I will see you over there.